Well, welcome back. I'm Bill Donath, President of Logan County Genealogical Historical Society, and today we're taking a look at the results of Fire Log 12. I know that skips a bunch of them, but some of them haven't had material in them enough to bring to you. But the number 12 contained a copy of the Ossolien, which was a publication from Lincoln High School by the students that they started, I think, 1898. But this issue is from March of 1899. And we're going to go through it page by page and show you how they put it together and what kinds of things they were talking about in the 19th century. So I hope you enjoy it. Well, here is the Lincoln High School Ossolien of 1899, March of 1899. It's the fourth issue of the school year. So it started in September, October, and then rolled over into the new year of 1899. So let's take a look at what we have here. One of the things I tried to figure out was, what does Ossolien mean? So I started researching Ossolien, and there are a couple things that it could be. One is to ossify. Ossifying is when people or things that are alive and growing have reached their maximum height, and the growth section of their bones hardens, so they're not going to get any taller or bigger. That's what I think it is, because they're reaching the end of high school, they've done all their growing, they're young adults now. The other thing I found out, came across, was the Ossolien is a name of a town in Poland, and the biggest family, the wealthiest family, the most influential family, took the name as their last name. It started out as like Gustav of Ossolien, or however they pronounced it over there. And then, but that was a far-fetched thing for high school newspaper or publication. So let's take a look at what's inside. Well, inside the front cover we have some local advertising, and this was the editor's copy that I found in the fire log, and the cover had a previous issue's advertising, and this was the new advertising that was going to replace the old. So the editor of the Lincoln Herald, now they did all the publishing. If you look right down here at the bottom, it says the Lincoln Herald job print. They did that, and the editor was probably teaching somebody about being an editor and how to mark errors so that the typesetter could go back and redo them. If we get a pointer here, if you look here in the land dollar ad, they had the word daylight, and out here he had the capital L for light, so that needed to be changed. Over here he wanted to remove this little piece of artwork, and he had to close up some space here, put the apostrophe on the ladies. I forget what that one was. I chopped it off when I cropped it for this slideshow. And it's for the Lutz Company. Charles Reed ad for textbooks and other books. So he had a company for a book, it's just a bookshop. I. Altman, and it is Altman, so the N had to be added in there. Then we got E. Burton down here. And we did land dollar. This is Ian Kerr, which is one of the photographers in town. And this was one of those right away, you write for the advertising, so you have to write directly to there's no store in town that does that. And then you have the Adam Dinger's Ideal Store, Ideal Cash Store. So that's the advertising inside the front page. Here's the first story that is in the Ossolien. And we have to remember that the previous year, 1898, was the year of the Spanish-American War. And that's what this story is based in. A young man from the United States is in Cuba, and he's trying to help somebody get out of Cuba. He has to, it's kind of like the spy things today, and all the adventure and shooting people and all that sort of stuff. Well, that's all in here. And a little love thing going on at the end of the, because he does get out, he does get his other fellow out, and they get to the United States, and he meets up with his former girlfriend, who was under the impression that he was a coward, that he had run away from the action and just tried to save himself. But this last couple of paragraphs, especially the last one, where the fellow he got out by the name of Wales said, Ralph a coward? Well, he's the bravest coward I've ever saw anyway. And that was the end of that story. But it was a nice little story, probably written by a student, but they didn't identify the student. Then they talked about student journalism, and they're pretty new at it yet. It's probably not more than a year old. The earliest one I've seen is 1898. Let's put it that way. It might have been older. But the student journalism, and it talks about criticisms they're getting and how they're going to respond to those. And that continues on those two columns on page 3. Page 4 finishes that one up. And then they have these little tidbits, or don't you know. And it goes, the freshman knows not, and knows not that he knows not. Shun him. The sophomore knows not, and knows that he knows not. Honor him. The junior knows not that he knows. Pity him. The senior knows and knows that he knows. Reverence him. And then they have the queries with the questions that are going on in their society at the high school and whatever. Another short story is Suicide That Failed. And this is one of those unrequited love things where fellow is rejected by his he wants her to be his girlfriend anyway. And they work through this, except they don't work through it, and he decides to commit suicide. And that's why the title is The Suicide That Failed. And the reason it failed was that when he tried to hang himself, the cord that he used stretched. And as he stepped off the table or the chair, he passed out from fright more than anything. And when he came to, his feet were on the floor, and he was not dead. So he decided he'd just keep on going. Then we have these little things called rare wit. And some of them are funny for the time, I suppose, but some of them are just bad puns or bad dad jokes and stuff like that. The exchanges is the other papers that they're getting from the schools they're sending theirs to. And one of them is the University of Illinois. So here's the Illini. And then it's hard to tell what some of these schools are from, but the Hastings Collegian, the high school ages, that's Bloomington High School, okay. And the white and blue, Hyde Park. And then here we have a page where they show us the editors and the people who are working on this publication. And these little articles, just among ourselves, is what's happening around the school, and where the fault lies is trying to decide who is responsible for things. But let's take a look at the names here. Made that part a little bigger for you. But the editor-in-chief is Don M. Parker, and he's going to graduate in 1901, so he would be a sophomore. Editor, or the alumni editor, is Professor H.H. Brauscher. That would be the adult supervisor for them. Will E. Trapp is the literary editor, and he's a senior. He's going to graduate in '99. Maud Mangus is local editors, and she's a junior, so she'll graduate the next year. Park Montague is a freshman, so he's a local editor. The business manager is Charles Sims. The assistant business manager is Clifford Ogle. What I like about these sorts of things, and down here it just tells you what it costs per year, 75 cents a year or 10 cents a copy. And this continues those little articles. This one is parliamentarian law. And that was pretty important back then because, you know, they didn't have TV, they didn't have telephone. Well, they had telephones, but not to use like we do today. And then no radio. That was not invented yet. So we have a lot of social organizations like the Masons and the Rebecca's Lodge and the IOF Lodge. You know, all the lodges had at least one organization, sometimes two or more. So parliamentary law, when running those meetings, was very important. So that was part of their curriculum. Then we had society gossip, and maybe I did get some of those big. No, it didn't. So let's go back to the previous one here. Yeah, so society gossip is just the stuff that's being talked around about this at the school. Athletics. This article is about girls basketball and the fact that they're working with the college, Lincoln College girls, to have games and practices and things of that sort. And the boys are, it's March. Yeah, so it's still pretty cool, and the boys are starting to think about the baseball season and the track and field season. Coming contest with Atlanta High School, an athletic contest and a literary contest. The advisor and a couple of students went up to talk to Atlanta to get it all organized. And grammar grade notes. Dean Hill is home from Cuba, so he's been probably in service, I suppose. And then let's see if we have another name here. Mae Brown will attend the business college. There must be a lot of Helens and Johns in the high school at this time. And you have to remember too that the high school was not very big as far as the number of students. I think in the first 10 years they might have graduated 150 people. So the classes weren't very large at all. Okay, let's see. Greg Mills, teasing him, insists that he only paid regular price to get his hair cut. And that continues over here. And then we have alumni notes from the people who have attended before. And in the first one I found, from the 1898 one, I found a reference to one of my great-grandaunts, and she graduated from Lincoln High School in 1875. Okay, alumni notes. Henry Marvine, 98, is now at work in Granite City. Lynn R. Parker is teaching a Prosper School near Emden. Clarence Pierce, of 95, is still confined to his home after lingering illness. Back then, when people got sick, they stayed home until they were well. And you got to remember, too, that they didn't have the medications that we have nowadays to make them feel better or help them get over things quicker. So when they got sick and they stayed home. They either got well or they didn't. Leslie Rigdon, class of 90, holds a responsible position with Carson Perry Scott in Chicago. Miss Georgia Hauser, 96, who has been spending the winter in Texas, has returned home. Miss Mary H. Rue, 89, is visiting her parents, Reverend and Mrs. T.T. Holton, on Tremont Street. And then she's going to go visit some other folks before she goes home. Harold Trapp of 95 was among the successful contestants in oratory at the University of Illinois. Molly Coogan Edwards, Mrs. Molly Coogan Edwards, 83, is living at 57 West 112th Street, New York City. Fred Cossett, of 80, is located at Wichita, Kansas, where he has been engaged in the lumber business for some time. Miss Minnie Kinman, 88, visited relatives and friends. J.H. Sherman, 88, is practicing law in Denver, Colorado. David Hartz, David Hartz Jr., remember that. And Clifford Quisenberry, 96, spent the spring vacation at home. They still claim University of Illinois is the only place to go. And somebody's announcing their wedding here. Miss Marion Jones is going to marry David Wilson Earl of Seymour, Illinois. And it's going to be the following Tuesday, March 28th. It's 6:30. Fred J. Hudson, of 87, is still unable to be about, but is improving. So somebody's been ill, and he's been ill for a long time, apparently. And here we have, page 13? I'd like to see this big advertisement, teachers wanted. People could teach right out of high school in some schools. This was about the time, though, they started having 2-year programs or summer programs for want-to-be teachers to get certified to be teachers in the one-room schools or whatever. Classmates and friends, what's going on with everybody in the high school. Gilmore Stone is back in school after a long illness. Clarence Prim, a junior member of our school, is now learning the tailor's trade. Miss Florence Corwin made her regular visit to her home in Skelton. When will the new building be commenced, and will it be completed by September? The Ossolien that I have from 1898 talked about the new high school. And the new high school was the older part of the old high school. It was on Broadway Street. So it was a yellow brick building, and it was torn down when the high school became a junior high, except for a portion of it. I remember the industrial arts was in that area of the school, if I remember right. And Charles Anderson has quit school and is now delivering for Daner's Butcher Shop. Back then, most people, 8th grade was their last year of school, and they went to work. And they could live on, farming or whatever business they got into, or whatever. People could quit school at this time and get a decent job and improve themselves on the job. That was true even up through the 60s when I was in high school, because you had Caterpillar in the various towns that you could go get a job at, and they were always hiring. And then you could stay there for 30 years, and of course that doesn't happen anymore. Dr. J.L. Lowry presented a high school with a universal dictionary, and it will be a valuable source of reference. Mrs. Lyons, or Mrs., the two Mrs., Lyons and Wright, spent a few days at their home in Normal. Professor Crowell of Lincoln University was a visitor. And Miss Mabel Wallace, 96, is at home on a few days vacation. Actually, Pearl Altman is back in school after several weeks of sickness. We're glad to see Pearl in school again. Miss Mabel Wallace, 96, is home on a few days vacation. She has been attending Northwestern University School of Oratory at Evanston. Talk about the school, the thoughts about the school, or continue, and then that committee that went up to Atlanta is named here. Professor Richardson is the advisor. Mark Hoblet and Frank Gullett are two students to help organize the competitions between the athletic clubs and the literary clubs. Annie Jones, who has been attending high school, went home to Maine. She'd been here 2 years and apparently had to go home. And then questions that mostly rhetorical questions about what's happening around the school. Here's the advertising on the last page, inside the cover, at the inside cover, I mean. And we have J.B. Paisley, Foster's Music Store, Kent College of Law, lace curtains that looks like it's M.H. Berry. So I don't know if that's a local person or somebody you have to mail order from. Dr. Lawrence is a dentist. Civil service applications are being asked for. Small's Candy Kitchen and Pure Candies on Kickapoo Street. W.E. Bullion Plumbing, Kinley and Walter, a drugstore, and they have a photo processing service there as well. Steam Laundry. There were several laundries in town, and this is one of them. C.W. Richards is a shoe store. Mrs. Frank Lawler does millinery. And Meyer Gresham on Kickapoo Street, across from the courthouse, has novelties and other things in his store. And here's the back cover. Lincoln House Barbershop, F.R. Perrin School Supplies, World's Washer. I have a lot of that advertising. Would be good to do just a video on each of the files I've got from all of these fire logs, because besides the 18 I've been working on here, the original donation included maybe 24 other fire logs, maybe more, because it was a couple of big boxes full, and I went through all of that and saved what I could, and I've got it in files. So we'll think about doing that. People like looking at the old advertising. Hanger Brothers Store, music and bookstore. Adolph Reinhardt, you're going to see his business card here in a minute, because it was wrapped up in here, and a couple other ads. National Bank is also one that I saw. Spot Cash, Wedding Ring Flower, Mail Order, Scientific American, J.G. Paisler. Well, the G, apparently the G is wrong, so it needs to be redone. E.E. Wadetsky, School Supplies. And then we'll look at those ads. Here's the First National Bank letterhead. And we see that Frank Froer is the president, James T. Hoblet is vice president, Frank Hoblet is cashier, and S.S. Hoblet is assistant cashier. And here's the ad for Adolph Reinhardt's jewelry store. Got the lowest prices, spot cash, all welcome, best goods. And here are all the goods that he deals in, both as wholesale and a retail dealer. And here's that civil service ad that we saw earlier. Here's the J.B. Paisley ad we saw earlier as well. And then the last one here is the World's Washer. For the young people who haven't learned how to read cursive yet, this could be a challenge. The World Washer. Save time, save labor, save clothes, satisfaction guaranteed or money returned. C.E. Ross. And I have tons of this advertising. And I think that's the end of it. Yep, there we go. We'll see you in the next one.